Good morning. Welcome to the new edition of Improve Yourself. We often hear absolutely incomprehensible pieces of advice. And most of the advices are such that if they are followed, can be quite harmful. Apparently they look very nice, very human, very full of consideration, full of sympathy, full of love. In reality, they are dangerous to your psyche and to your mental health. One of the pieces of advice that we often hear and we often give to others is, try to be somebody else. Walk in somebody else's shoes. Somebody is suffering. A child makes a fun of him, and we tell the child, don't make fun. Okay, that's okay. And then we say, try to walk in his shoes and see how he feels. This is something absolutely unimaginable. Walking in somebody else's shoes in a way to empathize with that person is emotionally shattering. You see, there is one thing to say, try to understand his pain. That's okay. But to suffer that pain is bad. And that is why choosing to walk in the shoes of a person, another person, can be a dangerous exercise. It can affect the health, the mental health, and the well-being of the person who follows that advice. And this hunch of mine was proved to be very correct in a recent study at Buffalo University, where we found that the people who follow this advice harm themselves. It's often suicidal. Now imagine, a person is mentally sick to the extent of being suicidal, and you ask a child to follow in his shoes. What sort of advice are you rendering? You see, there are two routes to the same thing. Suppose you have got to reach a goal, and there's a big bog or a big morass or a big pond which you have to cross. One is you walk straight through the pond. The other is you take a circuitous route. But if you walk through the pond, there's a danger that you will definitely spoil your clothes, and also possibly you might drown. But taking a circuitous route, you arrive safely, cleanly, and in a better state of mind and physical study. So what's wrong with that? There's one thing which we call imagine others' perspective, IOPT, imagine others' perspective. That's very well. This is great. The second is the walking a mile scenario. This is image self perspective taking. You are imagining yourself taking that perspective. So that is a difference. Now when you are thinking about other person's feeling, those feelings are upon you. And that is why if you take that step of following your shoes, you are going down the mental pathway, and then you are going to be dejected, sad, morose, frustrated. I suppose you remember, long back I had, in one of such talks I had said, it's important to empathize, but it's not proper to sympathize. When you have an empathy, I had very clearly stated at that time, you can understand the implications of the pain and the frustration of the other person. When you start to sympathize, you are allowing that person's pain to rub on you. And when that pain and suffering rubs on you, you are harming yourself. You know, you have got to be like lotus, immersed and in the mud and water and still remain outside the impact. And that is what happens. Now when you take somebody else's pain, ISPT, image self-perspective thing, what are you doing is, you are avoiding empathy because you are taking that burden mentally. Somebody else is suffering and you take that burden mentally. You're not empathizing, because empathizing would mean you provide solace. Here you're not providing solace, rather you are just trying to take the burden. You cannot take away the burden. No, what happens is, the pain, the frustration, the suffering is all mental. So when you say that you want to take away the burden, you are not taking away the burden, you are adding to the burden. That burden would remain still there. But some portion of that burden would be transferred to you without decreasing the burden over there. Now this is something which has got to be guarded against. Again I go to the example of a child, because this is the worst thing that the parents do. They always tell a child, try to follow his path. Put yourself in his shoes, and then you will see how much pain is there. You see, when you want to show sympathy, you are acknowledging the person's pain and want to accept that pain. But when you want to show empathy, you accept that person's pain without sharing that pain. Sharing of pain doesn't decrease the pain of somebody else, but sharing the problem takes away the burden. That's what I'm saying. Try to understand his issue. Give him a suggestion about that. But don't just be melodramatic the way they are. In the Hindi movies, somebody dies and they go there and start beating. And then sometimes adding to the pain of those people. You know, it's like a wound. When you have a wound, a scab forms on the surface. You rub that or scratch that scab and the blood again comes out. The wound healing process has stopped. Same is about somebody is frustrated, somebody is sad, somebody is disconsolate. And then you again go and start scratching that physical wound you can see, mental wound you cannot see. So you scratch that mental wound. And all the memory and the pain revives. And the process of healing that had been set in motion comes to an end. And that doesn't help the person, rather it adds to the person. You know, when you feel threatened, what happens now psychologically? When you walk in somebody's shoes, you understand the same pain that he has. And when you feel anxious, when you feel threatened, what happens is the peripheral blood vessels restrict your heart's functioning and it cannot pump sufficient blood in your body. You can detect this in a laboratory, that's true. And you would be finding that those who follow the system of walking on by shoes, there the restriction is much more than in those who have only empathy, who can only understand the pain, the cause of the pain, not the pain. Now, that is a difference. You have to understand the cause of the pain, not the pain itself. And this research I'm talking about, they studied that and they could see, and the persons were under the monitoring system continuously. And they were, when they understood the pain, the heart was functioning normally. The peripheral blood vessels were functioning okay. There was no constriction of the heart. But when the people shared the pain and walked in the shoes, Mentally they put themselves in the same position. Then the peripheral vessels contracted, the flow of the blood from the heart was restricted, and that's not a good sign. That's definitely not a good sign. Now this thing, following the shower, is worst for some professions, medical profession. If the doctor starts sharing the pain of each patient, by the end of the day he'll be a nutcase. If a nurse starts sharing the pain of all her patients, can she work at all? No. She'll be reduced to be a blubbering mass of man or woman, for whatever that may be. And there's an area of burnt out. Same is about the war. You go in a war, or a policeman is controlling a mob. If he tries to understand and follow the frustrations of that, can he control them? Or can a soldier fight a war? Cannot. So what the pain and the suffering is, it ultimately affects the career of those people as well. That why why is it now that we have got more cases in the war of PSTD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD? That is because now the people are always trying to follow that system of put yourself in the shoes of the others. When you are fighting a war, ISIS people, for example, I'm being very clear, or the Hitler's Nazis, never felt the issue of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, while the North Americans do. I'm reminded of a statement by General Musharraf, earlier former president of Pakistan. He came to USA, and that day 2 US soldiers had died in Afghanistan. And everybody was crying, we have lost 2 soldiers and this and that, which is, I can understand the human pain that they were suffering. And Musharraf said, well, I lose 500 people every day in this war. And we don't cry the way you are crying. Because if we start crying that way, the whole nation would be nothing but nutcases, and not even in a week. We have to take the things as they come. And this blubbering and weeping and counseling takes away the capacity to fight. And transfer that situation to everyday life. Each action, every activity is a war against the elements, against the conditions, against the environment. So how can you just come to your feelings? That takes away from the hardiness of the human being. So if it's wrong in the profession, which has a higher burnt out case, it is wrong in the human issues as well. You reduce yourself to a level of sniveling, weeping people who are incapable of achieving anything. I'm not saying you should be insensate. When you are fighting a war, then you can understand that other person is also under the order to shoot you. You can understand that you are fighting and he is fighting, one of you has to die. Okay. You can understand that the family of that man would suffer when he dies. But you cannot say, okay, in that case I will not kill him. So, walking in the shoe of somebody else reduces your capacity, A, to think, B, to act. So, the main purpose of being a good human being is understand the cause of the suffering, the frustration, and if possible try to remove the cause. But do not identify yourself with that. In the first case, there is a catharsis of emotions the end of the tragedy according to Aristotle. In the other case, it's reduction to absurdity, the theatre of the absurd. You have allowed yourself to become a pawn because of your unacceptable delving into the passions of the others. I had a bypass surgery, and my wife instructed people not to come. Told them no, because most of the people who come say, well, my uncle had a surgery and this has happened, and he had a surgery and that's what happened. She says, no, nothing doing. You ask for how he is on the phone and you will respond to you. But till he is cured, no discussions. We could understand the feelings of those people, yes. But some feelings can overflow and sap your energy. So it's harmful for you, and it's harmful for the person also whose footsteps you are following. So try to retain sanity. Rather than saying to a child, how would you feel if it was done to you? Say, think about how that person is feeling. If you can do that, you'll be doing the child a favor and doing yourself a favor. Thank you.